Welcome back to Dragon Army. This is my first ever TBR, which is, for those of you that don't know, to be read. And I'm doing this now for the month of January, sharing with you the books that I hope to read this month. And I intend to do this every month, February, March, and the months that follow. But I don't know if I'll do it every month. I've got a lower reading goal that I set this year. I set 40 books to be read this year, which is still a good goal, but the last couple of years I've tried to read 52 books in 52 weeks, but I intend to write a lot more this month, and so that will slow down my reading a little bit, so it's very intentional while I'm doing some of that. But this video is going to be about the books that I hope to read here in this month. First book that I'm going to read is called Bright We Burn by Kiersten White. Claim the throne, demand the crown, rule the world. This is the third entry into the Conqueror's saga, which I stumbled upon last year, maybe it was the year before, and I Darken, another book, and then Bright We Burn are the three books in the trilogy, and it is an alternate retelling of Vlad the Impaler, the historical character figure Vlad the Impaler, but this time it's a young girl named Lada, and it is rich with characters, and the storytelling is phenomenal, and the events that transpire are very attached to historical moments in history, and it's in a different country altogether. It's all about like the Ottoman Empire and all of those things, so it's completely removed from what I'm used to reading, the fantasy that I'm used to reading, the European fantasy that I'm used to reading. And so it's been a breath of fresh air, and it's been really cool. And so I started this book already just a couple days ago, and I'm already a quarter of the way through the book. It's that good. It's got beautiful prose. It has completely captivated me, and I'm super engaged. Definitely reading this one all the way through. It's going to be my first read of 2020. The second book that I hope to read this year is called Mistborn, or The Final Empire. It's by Brandon Sanderson. And if you know me, this is a duh. I've read this book before many times, and I reread this book every year or two. The reason why I'm rereading it right now, and this is always going to be a quick read for me, is that my brother is just now getting into the series. This last year, I had him read the original trilogy, and now he's about to start the second trilogy in the saga, the Wax and the Wane series, and he got the first book, The Alloy of Law, I believe, for Christmas, and so he's going to start that. So I want to read the first three, get back into the world, so that I can read The Alloy of Law with him. If you don't know what you should, what are you doing if you don't? Mistborn is dystopian fantasy, and it is about a young urchin girl named Vin who joins a thieving crew, and they try to topple the Final Empire. And it's much more difficult than that seems. Brandon Sanderson is an incredible fantasy author. He creates these elaborate magic systems. In Mistborn, the magic system is all about digesting metals, which sounds weird, and it is. And when I first heard about the book, I didn't want to read it because that sounded like the most silly, ludicrous magic system that I had ever heard of. But now drinking vials of metal is it's what we do. The third book that I hope to read in January is called The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I've never read one of his books, and I've never read anything, of course, in the series. I stumbled upon this book because it was accidental. I started to read his newest book, A Little Hatred, and it was cool. Like, it's very European fantasy. I think it's fantasy, or it's European. I don't fully know, but I was getting into it, and they were talking about the shields and the swords and the banners and all of these things, like, very intricately, like he knew what he was talking about, and the characters were kind of cool, but it seemed like they were already established, so I was like, what's going on here? And I looked into it a little bit further. although this is the number one in its specific series, it is in the same world as at least another series that Abercrombie has done many years ago. And so my goal is to go back to the very beginning of this world and read in kind of publication order and chronologically what's happening here, so that I can come back to A Little Hatred later and pick up there, knowing the families of the characters and the battles that have occurred in the world and different things like that. So I am a little bit confused. If you know this author and this series, please inform me in the comments down below. But there is a trilogy called The First Law, but then there's a series of 6 books, I think, called First Law World. What am I supposed to read first? Right now, I'm planning to read The Blade itself, which is the first book in the First Law trilogy. I hope that's correct. Please quickly correct me if that's incorrect, because I don't want to get too far into this world and these characters if I'm not starting at the right place. All right, another book on the docket is called Loveology by John Mark Comer. And this is a different book than the ones that I've previously talked about on this channel. If you go to my Goodreads, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise to you, because you know that I not only read fantasy, but I try to read some leadership and faith-based books as well. And this is one of those faith-based books that I started last year, and I put it down not because it wasn't good. In fact, it was really good, but because I got busy and just wanted to read some other stuff. And it's a lot easier for me to disconnect and read sci-fi, fantasy literature than to read books that I actually have to think and process and change. And so Loveology is a really cool book so far. It's called Loveology because it's really a book about the theology of love, or the theology behind love. It's all about what's right in relationships today and in our culture, and it's also about what we're getting wrong in about relationships in our culture today. And so it explores all of that. It talks about sexuality and romance and singleness and male and female, and it just goes into detail. So it's not just a book for believers. It's a book for people that are in the church and outside of the church. If you are curious on what the kind of historical, biblical idea of love and relationships is, as opposed to, and maybe you're tired of, today's culture and Hollywood's idea of what love and romance is. If you're kind of sick of that and you're curious to what this more historical, again, biblical idea of what love, romance, sex, sexuality is, Loveology might be something that's good for you. I'm checking it out and really enjoying it this far. Finally, I'll have a few Star Wars images flash by or scroll through. I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, and maybe I should catalog this visually as well, but I'm going through the chronology of the Star Wars canon right now. Not just the movies, but the books as well. I've never been steeped into this universe, but I've been interested in getting into it. So I read some of the graphic novels and books preceding episode 1, then I watched episode 1, and it's far worse than what you remember. And then I read a few of the connecting books and graphic novels in between, then watched episode 2, and it's also far worse than you remember. And so now I just finished episode 2, so I've got a graphic novel or 2, along with maybe a book or 2, as I'm watching the Clone Wars series for the very first time. I'm about to start the 2008 Clone Wars movie, then going into the television series, which I hadn't seen before. I'm really excited about it. I think I'll like it, but here's some of the books that I'll probably get through in January. These are super quick reads, mainly because they're short and pretty bad. Those are the books that I hope to read in the month of January. Let me know in the comments section below what you hope to read in this month. And if you've read any of these books or heard any of these books, especially if you know what order I'm supposed to read, the First Law trilogy, all of that stuff, please let me know that below. And as we're going through the month of January, coming to February, tell me what books that I should most certainly read come February. I'd love to include those as my TBR for February. Until then, thank you for your support so far. It's been awesome to see, really, in just a couple of weeks of having this channel, so many people come on board. We're almost at 100 subscribers, which is my first goal. I don't have a beard anymore, so I know some of you might thought that I just perpetually had hair on my face, and I don't. I go through phases. Let me know in the comment section down below if I should have a beard or not. Just kidding, don't. But do all the things, like, bell, subscribe, share, comment. Let's rig this YouTube algorithm and blow this channel up.